Well, like I said, if I'm covering things, ask questions. I want to tell you what you want to know. I don't want to talk about crap you don't care about. I'm going to talk about some crap you don't care about because I think you need to know it. But as a general rule of thumb, if you have a question and you're struggling somewhere, ask me. I will be happy to tell you and cater this panel to what y'all want to actually know. That's the important thing. So, Digigrade. It's Digitigrade. There's an I between digit and grade. Everyone misspells Digigrade. It drives me crazy. There's also Planetigrade. We're Planetigrade. We walk on our heels. Where's my pins? We are Planetigrade because that's how we walk. Animals are Digigrade because they have their hip point, they have their knee, then they have their heel up here, and they walk on their tootsies. So if we were to do Digigrade, we'd be standing on our tiptoes all day. So that's why we use padding to pretend that we're doing it so we don't die all the time. Now you can wear the boots, and there's stilts. And those are perfectly valid ways to make the Digigrade work for you. I would break my legs and die. I roll around on the carpet, and I'm an idiot. It wouldn't work for my way. So when I built her, I decided I was going to use foam padding because since I roll around on the carpet, I want something soft. I want something that will hold its form, and I want something that, if I fall over and eat a wall, because I do that sometimes, it's not a big deal. I'll bounce off of it, and I lost my white eagle. And then you have deer and horses that are, I cannot say it, it's like ungulagrade, which means they walk on their hooves. But it's almost the same as Digigrade.
They walk on their nails.
Yes. They have like a little pad, and then they walk on their actual nails. It's actually really cool. I dissected a deer hoof. I do taxidermy on the side, so I know a little bit too much about animal anatomy. So what we're trying to do is make, that's our calf. I'm not drawing real right now. Human feet do this number, which they don't want to do naturally. We do not, I mean, if we wanted to get a conceiving Digigrade, we'd be walking around kind of like this number. And that's just not fun. And what you have to do is, with my wonderful human leg here, you have to build it up to give that appearance of an animal leg. And let's see. Usually there's several ways to do it. I have butt padding to help make the shape more like this. Because my English is so good right now. Trying to figure out how the best way to explain this, because I've never actually explained Digigrade padding to other people. You have to make your knee actually farther forward than it is on a human. And at which point you need to pull your heel all the way up to your calf to help make that shape actually do the angles like a dog would. Or maybe another foot, because I keep erasing everything because I'm naked. Yay, that's all good. So with mine, I only used 3 pieces of padding, which I'm not wearing it right now. You'll get the gist. I actually probably put it on one foot. I did a knee pad, a butt pad, and a calf pad to give my shape. And I can't put it on all the way, but you get the gist. And with this, hidden with fur, I mean, yes, it flaps around, but the fur hides lots of ills. You can get that, and my knee's up here now, and then this pulls my heel all the way up to here, and my calf is in this area. So I've completely changed my anatomy visually without actually changing how I walk. And of course, stilts would do this, and it would be completely normal. I mean, your heel would be where an actual Digigrade heel would be, but there's trade-offs.
They're not exactly comfortable.
I actually had them boots, and they are comfortable. It's just I would turn an ankle, and it would end badly. And on top of that, we have our big old flapper feet. We don't have little bunch toes like animals do. And to help pull off the Digigrade look, you need to help pull the toes higher up on your foot. A lot of people will just put the toes on the end of your foot, but then you have a humanoid flappy foot with all of this wonderful Digigrade. And on a real dog, they have these kind of, I won't call them cat paws, because the Huskies have the little cat paws where they're really high arched. And she has the big toes too that kind of sells it. You don't have to go so big. I just found it easier to oversize the toes and put them on top of the foot. Because if you put the toes all the way at the end of your foot, you'll have these huge spatula feet, and you won't sell the Digigrade. Because you always have to look at real animals when you're doing this. Furry is based in real animals. So whatever you want to portray, look at what you have. If you're a deer, look at actual deer legs. See how they look. Are they slender? How do the hooves look? How should you do the toes, the flanges? They also have the little toes on the back. Do whatever works for what species you have. You might have to play with it a little bit. Plus, you can go tuning, you can go real. I'm scattering everyone. Does anyone have any questions that I can help you with as I'm standing here half dressed?
Is it better for using foam or polyfill?
There's no better. There's what's good for you. I wanted a super shaped, form-fitting, like meticulously shaped, unwrinkly costume because that's one weird thing that I'm neurotic about. I hate wrinkles, I hate seams, I hate all of these things. So I decided that for me personally, I needed sculpted foam. Now you can do polyfill just fine, which you would just make polyfill like kind of like little miniature pillows and like teardrop shapes and what have you, and then you would tailor your costume around those. They're a little different. These are firm, and these also trap heat a bit more than polyfill would, because polyfill is a more open structure because they're like pillows. But that said, polyfill likes to clump and sag and kind of be silly, so there's drawbacks on either way. Because I mean, I can pass these around if y'all want, they're saggy. So, or you can come up and see them at the end.
So in other words, you don't actually change the way you're folding yourself.
I do not change the way
It's just,
I mean,
it's just.
when I'm actually in suit, I sometimes kind of hunker a little, just to kind of, I puff my chest out and hunker a little, but I don't actually change how I'm standing.
So your balance isn't thrown off or anything else?
No, I mean, the only thing that throws off my balance is this planetoid right here. But the actual legs, not at all. And I actually see it as a benefit because I have this knee padding. So if I hit the floor, I have a little bit of cushion there. I mean, I have a nice red spot where I did it earlier because I eat the floor a lot because I'm cool like that. But I need to learn to get off the floor sometimes. But no, the polyfill padding can be made almost, is a slightly different way of making. You actually have to pre-make the pillows, and then usually you have to kind of visualize what sort of shaping you want. Because these guys, you can actually just glue foam to your, I use a duct tape dummy, and I put my britches on the duct tape dummy. And then I started cutting out pieces of foam and pinning them to it to try to understand what shapes I needed to make the form I wanted. And I actually had a really crappy pair of pants I used for this. And I would tack the foam to it. And then I'd try them on. And I'd run around the house and act like a fool and see how they looked in the mirror and how it moved. And then as I refined it, eventually I pulled them off and I sleeved mine in a nylon spandexy lycra nonsense, and I tacked them to my good pants. Now if they ever wear out or I destroy them, I can just pop them off and put a new one on. Now some people, because that's how hers are made too, hers are sewn to her undersuit. You also can actually make them sewn to the suit. So as you make your padding, you just sew it directly to the suit or sew a liner in behind it, and that way it's all one piece. These are a little bit more fiddly to get into because you have to put your breeches on and you have to slide into the suit and play with it a little bit. If they're actually sewn into the suit, you just slide it on and go. But the pattern
pockets into the suit itself.
Well, that's part of the patterning, which I'll get to.
Okay.
But let's see, what am I covering? Yes. No, you weren't hand raising. Sorry. I thought you were asking a question. Is there any questions? Because I'm just going to scatterbrain all over the place.
About how much weight does that add?
It really doesn't add much. I mean, maybe a pound or two at tops. But really, it just adds heat and bulk. And it's really not that bad. Most of my heat I get in the chest area. For some reason, I don't know why. These are actually not that damp. I throw this whole thing in the washing machine because I'm crazy. I throw everything I have in the washing machine. Tail goes in the washing machine too. So that's how I build my fursuit, is actually to completely machine wash. But these do not add much weight at all. I mean, if you were to go more extreme, like she has much more extreme padding than I do. Hers adds a little bit more weight, and also how you build your padding. Like if you build it with a spray glue, that's going to add more weight because spray glue absorbs into the foam. I use hot glue, which everyone says is the wrong way to do everything, but I've been doing it for 10 years and it works for me, so if it works. Well, I don't use a lot of hot glue. I tack. Like I just use the lightest bit of hot glue and I slam them together and I roll around. And there's almost, I mean, if you handle them, you won't really feel the hot glue. I use really thin bits of hot glue. I mean, there's some lumpy bits, but the spray glue is what a lot of people use and prefer to use and think is better practice for fursuits, but do what works for you. But there's also heavier foams, because there's the closed cell foams and the really denser foams, and I buy the green upholstery foam from Joann's or Hancock's. You go into the back corner somewhere and they have these beautiful huge rolls of it that cost an arm and a leg because it's made out of oil. It's an oil-based product, and every time oil changes, get coupons. I used probably easily $100 worth of foam, playing with and failing and remaking things and figuring out what I wanted. But for shaping, as I wander back to pins, yes, pins, and shaping, as I showed you with mine, you usually with Digigrade, you end up with some sort of knee piece. How extreme you make it, because she has much more angular joints than I do. Mine are more rounded joints because that's what I wanted stylistically. She has much more angled joints. And her knee comes down even harder because your real knee is probably, can you bend your knee probably? Thank you. Actually, her knee is below her knee pad. So you've pulled your leg up higher. On my Fursuit, I have dropped my entire torso down some. My crotch on my Fursuit is actually about here. My Fursuit's knee is below my knee, and my heel is below. While on her stuff has been pulled up, like a pair of britches. And her knee's here, and she's just, can you turn sideways, please, darling? That works, that sideways works too. And instead of a soft curve like I have, hers is a harder, more exaggerated curve to push her Digigrade even farther because you're more werewolf. And the angular works for her because she's just more angular in general. And that's why I was saying about stylistically, do what's right for your costume. No one shape is going to fit you. You have butt padding? Okay.
I'm going all the way up.
Oh, I forgot. Yeah, you even have torso padding. Yeah, I don't have torso padding. And so usually you end up with some variation of a teardrop shape. It can be more angular. The more angular it is, it's going to look a little less organic. Because in nature, there's no sharp edges really on animals. And I mean, you have the ears and the teeth. Schematics aside, on their bodies, animals are usually kind of soft shapes, fluffy shapes, happy shapes. You want to pet it. And hers are angular, but they are rounded at the same time. And you can exaggerate it more. Now, one of the things I see a lot of a problematic area is people do not take into account for a calf. They don't actually give the animal a calf. We all have calves, but a lot of people just do the knee, and then they immediately go into the heel, and then do the flipper foot, and it kind of ends up looking like that on a person. And they don't take into account that there is a transition period between the knee joint and the heel joint, where that is the animal's calf. And really the easiest way to do that is just to space your padding out just a hair. Instead of doing the knee angle and then the heel angle, just push either one up or down a little bit depending on what you want. If you want a longer foot, push the knee up. If you want a longer thigh, push the heel down. It's really, that's where I say making a duct tape dummy and playing with your padding and gluing it to a pair of shorts and playing with it is going to just pay off dividends. Let's see, anything else about padding that I could cover that could help y'all? And anatomy with my character drawings. No padding questions.
Oh, for your knee padding, how flexible is it? Like, does it hinder you bending?
Have you ever handled any kind of like couch foam at all? Have you done any fursuit building before? Because this, if I wanted to, I could put it into a space bag and make it. I mean, it's nothing. And I mean, when you're putting it onto your pants, you could sew it on all the way, or if you're putting it in your purse, you can sew all the way. But I got lazy because it's mine and it doesn't really matter. And I only tacked mine on with a few stitches where it counted. And I've actually found that it helps it dry out faster that way. I don't know if there's like, if I'm just special or what, but having it being able to move and the pants to get away from the foam gives it more airflow, I guess. And also, whenever I'm wearing it, it just seems to get not as hot than whenever I had it actually glued straight on, touched everything. But as I said, I glued it to a crappy pair of pants and tried it on a million times, then peeled it off and skinned it and then stuck it to these. And you need a duct tape dummy to make Digigrade, or your life would be horrible. It just... Now, another way to make Digigrade without actually doing any of this is to take a commercial pattern, like just a jumpsuit type pattern, and then if you feel comfortable, you can actually make a Digigrade by taking the pattern and making the legs a little bit too wide, and then tailoring it to have the curvature you want. But that is a whole other ballgame. And that can lead to a lot of wiggle room and things not fitting right and bad words being said because you wasted that beautiful fur that you spent too much money on. So I'm a fan of carving it and testing it and then duct taping. And that's how I made my pattern for my bodysuit, is I I actually only made a waist down duct tape dummy because I'm cheap and lazy, and because I pretty much could eyeball from here up. And I literally I got a pair of cheap pajama pants and duct taped me from waist down and removed myself and hung it and taped it to a clothes hanger, and strung it from my ceiling. And I had a pair of pants, weird, creepy duct tape pants hanging out in my room, and that's how I actually also made my feet, and I had my feet duct taped too, because my feet attached to my suit. So it was very important that I get all of those parameters properly done. Now I'll turn my bodysuit inside out.
Speaking of feet, yeah.
Yes, you may. They might be damp. I apologize, as I said. That is out of my control since my panel is 1 hour after the Fursuit parade. So when I patterned her on my, actually, let me pop my tail off too. That'll make life a little bit easier because I forget I can take it off. I made everything with zippers because I'm crazy and zippers are off. Never do that, but it's so great at the same time. If I could ever find it. It makes cleaning a lot easier if you put zippers on anything that's bulky and ridiculous, like this awful tail that I made that I love so much. If I could ever figure out where I put, there it is. It'll make it easier to pass around to what people don't expect. Yes, I just have a zipper. I have 4 zippers in my fursuit. None of them are inappropriate. I have one on either ankle. I have one on my tail, and I have my entry zipper. And now I actually can turn my legs inside out. So see, I patterned mine a little funky fried, but you can actually see the Digigrade in the pattern. And that helps, that's what I was saying, if you take a standard pattern that's just a tube leg, and you actually use the seams and actually make the shaping you want, you can kind of hodgepodge a Digigrade that way if you're uncomfortable. And then you could make pattern that fits whatever you created on the outside and do it backwards instead of the way I do it. But that's a way, because some people work better by working backwards instead of carving. They'd rather create the shapes and fill the shapes. It's fursuiting. There's like 12 million ways to do everything, and all of them can be very valid ways of doing it. But anyway, I duct taped her, and I duct taped in English. Back up 1, 2. I put this on my creepy duct tape dummy in my room that was staring at me, and I also had my feet, and I had carved out my feet and put them on there too. So I had this whole number, just like this, hanging in my room, and I duct taped it. And then I took a Sharpie and drew every marking I wanted on my fursuit on it. And when I did the crotch, I actually took a whole bunch of trash bags. I knew I wanted a dropped crotch. But I didn't want to waste foam trying to make it. I just kind of wanted the pattern to take it on. So I kind of hodgepodged it a little bit, and I used garbage bags and other trash items that weren't bad to fill in this area so the duct tape would take the shape I wanted. And once I got it duct taped, I Sharpied her markings on, because she has her saddle, and then she has the black, and then I put one, and also I Sharpied where I wanted fur changes. Like, she has a longer fur that travels down the underside of this because I'm special and make my life harder. And after I got that done, I then figured out where I needed seams. And anywhere there's a curve, you're probably going to need a seam. Unfortunately, I hate seams. I really do. They're impossible to hide on her really short brown fur. And so what I did was I actually put as many seams as I could on her inside of legs so that people wouldn't notice them as much. Because if you're looking on the inside of my legs, what are you doing? So the outside panel I managed to put as one big piece, and then the inside is a couple of smaller pieces to make up for the curvature that the outside has and to offset it. And also, I can talk about this too, that's called smocking. It's a fun way to take in a baggy fursuit that takes 12 million hours to do. But let's see, patterning, duct tape, drawing. Oh, and then I had my pattern. I had a duct tape dummy on my duct tape dummy. I cut it apart, and then I added a 1/2 inch seam allowance. You always have to add an allowance, because if you sew exactly what you cut apart, you have nothing to sew together. Because there's not that little buffer in between. Yeah, it is so much fun messing up and having to redo it, let me tell you.
Now, do you shave the fur off the seam allowances?
No, I don't. Some people do. I don't. I sew it. I actually sew most of my seams twice. So what I usually do is I sew it, I brush out all the seams really good, pick out all the hair, and then I sew it again, because I roll around on the floor a lot. I'm not very nice to my costume. She needs a little extra painful. Most people can get away with only sewing it once. They don't do this really stupid nonsense I do.
Put
But-
them in your Paddlefoot.
Yes, but like in high wear areas, like your armpit or your crotch, places that take a lot more stress, you can always 2-stitch seams. That's extra insurance, because if you're in a con and you crouch and it goes, you're like, oh, hi.
I did that.
We're not having a party over here right now.
Of course, that was also for another.
I know someone who popped a crotch seam too, and he didn't know it, and there's some great pictures. So
I knew it immediately. I was in the Fursuit parade. She was.
I've only ever busted a
picked
knee.
her up and went,
in 10 years, the only thing I've ever actually busted was a knee. So I would also say that if you're doing like a really light Digigrade padding, to be careful and make sure you have enough room to move. Like if in the crotch area, if you just put it, your secondary duct tape on top of it, if you squeeze it right up to your crotch, you're not going to have any room between everything. And so that's like wearing an overly tight shirt. Things are going to pull and pop and not be happy. But when you have a really heavy Digigrade, like me and her, especially her, you have so much more wiggle room. You can get away with murder on a heavy Digigrade. You really can. Like I was cackling because I'm like, I made a form-fitting bodysuit. It was too tight in a few places. There was nothing I could do about it. With a Digigrade, I'm like, I have all this extra fur. I could take it in places and it'd be better. And it was a lot easier for me to deal with that than a normal plantigrade fursuit because apparently that's my thing. Do you have any questions about patterning? I'm hoping I'm being helpful.
Do you pattern out every single commission that you take? For
Yes,
this area?
I've never taken a bodysuit commission because I would charge a lot and it's a pain and doing everything custom, and I'm really meticulous and picky. But I would, for my heads and everything and shoulders and everything, I always draft patterns specifically for whatever I'm making. I get several measurements, and I also take like shoe duct tape dummies. These are new ones that I actually, first time I ever did shoe feet. And I never use a standard pattern. I want everything I make to be unique. Because there's a lot of ones that are just kind of too similar over and over again, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's a valid way of doing it. People buy for your style. My thing is I like being unique and individualist, and every creature has its own personality. If he looked like me, he wouldn't be near as raw. It'd be so sad. You wouldn't be able to model little children. And if I tried to model a child, no good would come of that. They would laugh at me. Well, I had blood. Does anyone else have any questions about patterning? I hope I'm being helpful. I mean, it's so broad. There's an old, ancient live journal I love telling people about. No one uses live journal anymore. It's become like Russian crazy land. Yeah. But it's Fursuit live journal. And that's what I used for like a decade and a half. And there's so much old knowledge if you dig around in there. It's amazing. That is like what we had before. Well, that's when we had sticks. All we had was Fursuit LJ. Nothing existed. I remember the Fursuit mailing list. Way back in the 90s. But it's just amazing that half the time if you have a problem, someone else has probably had the same problem, and if you just dig a little bit, you might be able to find it, because I literally have never made a Digigrade bodysuit before. I've just been doing it for long enough, and I've dug around so much, so I was like, I can do that. But it took some practice and work, and I decided I'd try to help people. Sorry, I'm rambling. Does anyone have any other questions that I can help with, and I'll go to something else? Well, I talked about feet being little flipper feet, because people like to put the toes on the very tip of the paw, and with Digigrade, it's them walking on their toes. That's why it's called Digigrade, walking on digits. And we do not walk on our digits. Our digits are way out here. And so whenever I made my foot paws, I actually had the shoe I was going to use. You can also just build them on a shoe and glue it on that way. I try something new every time I do it, and this is what I did this time. And I went crazy and made me crazy feet. And they don't have to be so crazy. These are about 3 times my actual foot size. But the real thing is you have to camouflage the fact that we got dang flipper feet. I mean, you have to make it look like you're an animal walking on your tootsies. And I mean, you just gotta play with anatomy, as I said, looking it up, and I'm being repetitive.
No worries.
I know. I just try to be helpful and ramble. I'm trying to think of anything else. I mean, I talked about padding. There's the pillow padding we talked about. Oh, there's another way of patterning. I forget because I hate using it because it weighs so much fur, and I like duct tape and duct tape sheet. There's a pattern method that's called draping, and it's actually common in the seamstress thing. And what you do is you take whatever you're going to pattern. Like if you make the pillow pattern, you can pin it to your form or whatever, and you actually drape the fur. Like I would do it backwards where the fur's on the inside, and drape it and figure out where you need your pinning. Actually doing it backwards would be bad. I've never done draping.
Do it with a scrap piece of material.
Well, yeah, I would use a non-stretchy cotton.
Yeah.
I use non-stretchy cotton for everything. I never touch my fur until I'm sure it's all perfect. And for draping, you'd take your padding on your dummy, and you would literally drape your piece of fabric over it and pin it. And pin it until it worked. You'd because usually fursuits have the seam that goes down the side. So you'd pin that first, and then you'd start taking in the fabric, making your shapes occur. I don't do draping that well because I don't like it because it seems really wasteful. It seems so much more sense to me if you were single color, draping would work. But if you had markings or more complex patterns, you'd waste a lot of fur trying to make that shape without doing a pattern first. And you have to make sure your fur direction is going right. I did that. Fur on an animal, most of y'all probably handled a dog or a cat or something. Fur naturally runs from the middle of the animal out. And also, actually, technically it runs down to their belly, but since we're people and standing up, it's just easier to make it go down. And I made an entire side panel go this way. So I got to waste that whole half yard of fur because, oopsie daisy. So whenever you're actually cutting, double check. And on my pattern pieces, I actually write arrows on them. Before I cut anything out, I go arrow, arrow, arrow here. I write like 20 million arrows because I herpaderp on occasion. And it can be expensive herpaderping with some of these furs. Because I saw a fur that was like $40 a yard. I'm like, I have a limit. Do you have a question?
Now, doing a Digigrade fursuit, does that add extra fur to?
Yes. I wouldn't say it would add. Not a lot. Like, I'm not talking a bunch, but I would throw an extra yard or two of depending on how much you have. Because I bought an extra yard. I actually bought a lot of this extra brown because it's a rare color, and I probably was never going to see it again, and I didn't ever want to run out. But I would you want to also take into account mistakes. I would be more concerned about a mistake than how much extra fur your Digigrade's going to take.
It's better to have 2 extra yards than 1 inch too short.
Spend that extra $30 or $40 and buy 2 extra yards of fur. And if you have multiple colors, kind of space it out a little bit. If you're mostly white with some black, buy an extra yard of white and buy maybe a half yard or a yard of black. You kind of got to play it by ear with how much fur you need. There isn't a calculator, unfortunately. Life would be so much nicer if there was a fur calculator for fursuits, because that's the question I hear about a lot.
I asked that yesterday.
That is something you honestly got to play by ear.
There's what I've done in the past with costuming is you can look up body surface area calculator, and you provide in your height and your weight, and it'll give you an approximation, and then just put
attack 3 extra yards to them, because you never know what's going to happen.
So. Also,
you want to take into account if your body changes too. If you make a really snug suit and you change,
yeah,
that happened to my mom.
Maybe you might be able to answer this. Where would we find snow meow first?
Fluffy snow.
You just, honestly, I can't tell you. Pattern fur is not my game. I do not like pattern fur. It's so hard to make it all mesh at the seams. She has tipped fur. That's what that's called, the grayish. And that's okay because the entire fur is the same. I don't like anything with spots or anything because it's just a lot harder to make it blend seamlessly when you have to do a transition.
Sometimes people do with the base color, and a lot of times for spotted animals, they do airbrushing it to get the spots on.
And airbrushing works too. Yeah. I'm just not a fan because, again, I roll around on the ground and I like to wash my fursuit in a washing machine. And airbrushing does not like washing machines. I like being able to sanitize everything heavily because I get moist.
And sometimes sticky.
Let's not say sticky around furries. Let's not. Let's say we did. Let's see. I'll actually mention this because this is really useful for just all fursuits. I learned this on the Fursuit Life Journal a long time ago, and it's awful to do. I'm not even going to lie. I hate doing it. It takes hours. But it's called smocking, and it's something they do on normal. And if you have anywhere on your fur, you have to be mindful because this brown fur I have is too short and it shows it and I can't do it, so I have to do it everywhere else. But if you have a spot like, say your butt's really baggy, or you have a baggy knee, or you have a baggy tummy, you can use elastic thread and weave it into the back of your fursuit, stacking. And it's awful to do. I'm not even gonna lie. This stuff breaks, it's fussy, it's awful, but it makes your one-way fur a stretch fur. Like my back actually is really stretchy because of it now. Let's see if I can get a piece of it. I mean, there's actually, I got about several more inches of fur hiding in all that because of how it's done. Because my midsection was a little baggy on my fursuit, but I didn't want to tailor it more because I was worried about movement issues. I was like, I learned a thing a long time ago, let's try it. And yes, you can buy this elastic thread at a Walmart. And it comes in basically black and white, and you really just have to weave it in. Like, it's like you're sewing, every like half an inch, just put a little bit in the backing. And you have to stretch it as you go. Like you'll do a line, and then you need to stretch it to make sure you won't break your thread. And then do a line, and you stretch it. You just have to stretch it every time you do it. Because if you keep doing it, it's just gonna get tighter and tighter, and then when you stretch it, it's gonna go boop, and completely explode on you. I did that too. I learned that. And smocking is so nice between the shoulder blades. Now, if I was to do an elbow or something, I would do it diagonally, like an X. I would do one panel sideways and one panel that way because those joints need way more movement. But since I'm just trying to take in the middle section, I only need it to go one direction, back and forth. Now, I would not know how it would behave if you were trying to go up and down, like from the nape of your neck to your rear. I can't tell you how that would work since I haven't done it. But if you had a fursuit that had some weird lumpy bumpy areas, you could totally sew in some elastic. And it's called smocking. You can look it up. They do it on normal cotton fabrics. Like, you know those little sundresses girls wear that are all like wrinkledy and stretchy? That's smocking. And it is a fun way to make your fursuit body fit more with a lot of work, but without cutting any fur. So if you had a fursuit that you commissioned someone and you were afraid to touch it, you could totally sew in some elastic to take it in. Even anyone with no sewing skills could probably do this and figure it out with just a little work. Anyway, that has nothing to do with Digitigrade, but it's helpful. Not a lot of people know about smocking. I didn't until a couple months ago. But can I answer any more questions for you? I talked about the feet. Most people know how to build feet paws. That's not the point of this place. Just put the toes on top of your foot so you don't have flappy feet. Flapjack feet, yes.
How much of it did you hand sew?
I did not hand sew any of mine. I mean, I hand sewed a little on the paws and her head, and maybe a little on the feet, but my bodysuit is entirely machine sewed. Because I do like I said, I did that cotton pattern. After I cut out my duct tape, I transferred all I bought Rummage Mill, like the crappiest cotton, as long as it doesn't stretch. Do not test anything in stretch fabric, because it will lie to you. Fur doesn't stretch. Not really. I mean, it'll stretch with use, but it's not supposed to really stretch. But if you use a crappy, like just quilter's cotton or any bargain bin cotton, even if you're doing a Digitigrade costume, try putting it in cotton first to make sure it fits. Just buy 7 or 8 yards of $2 cotton. That's like $10. Transfer your whole pattern to it, sew that thing up, put it on, and run around the house. See if maybe the butt's too high, or maybe the crotch is really tight, and you're like, oh, I should have upsized that. It saves you from wasting all your expensive fur you bought and failing at it drastically, because when I first did this, her crotch was awful. It was saggy and sad, and it was bad. And I was walking around the cotton, and I'm like, this is inappropriate. And so I went in with the cotton, and I put it back on my dummy, and I started pinning and trying to take it in, and then I would sew it and test it again. So I could test things without fearing about my $20, $30 a yard fur getting blown out the window, if that makes sense. Did I answer your question? I got sidetracked.
You did, yeah.
Okay, sorry. I'm a little heat strokey. Just a little heat strokey. But let's see. Anyone else have any questions I can help you with? I mean, really, I'm rambling. Yes?
Is there such thing as breathable fur?
Actually, there's this stuff I use. See this long black fur? I mean, you couldn't use it on your face or anything, but see this really long nappy fur? It goes by a lot of names, but I've heard monkey shag. If you part it, it's actually the thinnest fur I've ever used. And usually I think that's awful and horrible and hideous. Like, you can just see the mesh backing on it, but it's such a long fur that you never know. And it breathes. If you made a whole fursuit out of this, it would be so nice. But I have it on my back in a few other places. And on the back side of it, instead of being a normal backing, it actually is little bumps. Because instead of doing fur the whole way, it's little like clumps of fur spread out every ½ inch or so. And you can come look at it and spread it and take a look at it.
Kind of like what a wig is.
Yeah, actually, yeah, it's a lot like a wig. Or like, you know, the little My Pony hairs with it has little holes in each little clump of hair. It's that, but on like a weird mesh backing. And I got it in, and I was like, this is kind of thin, but it moves so nice. I want you. And I said, I'm going to get some. And it breathes so good. My back, I can tell on my back that this breathes a lot better. This brown fur is so dense that, you know, it's not, no.
Double fiber collar.
The shorter the fur and the denser the fur, the less it seems to breathe. The longer furs can get away with putting less fibers per inch and not have everything go all wonky. And so the longer furs are a little bit more forgiving in everything. You can get away with patterning nightmares. Like if you suddenly had to put a seam halfway across your belly, it's 1 inch fur no one's ever gonna know. It really aren't. This short stuff, this brown stuff is hideous and awful, and I hate sewing with it, but it looks nice. But it shows air. The only seam I have on my arms is on the underside. Hey, I popped my armpit. I did a boo-boo. But really, this short stuff, it does not breathe near as well as the long stuff. I mean, the DF fur, he's made out of DF fur. And that's it's called a lot of different names. It's like plush luxury shag and some other things. And her tail's made out of it, and that's what a lot of people are using now. And it breathes well, too. It just gets nappy. That's the only reason I don't like it. It gets nappy and needs to be brushed off. Yes, exactly. That's why only her butt and my little neck duffs is DF furs, because I don't like how it gets nappy. Can I answer any more questions? I'm still rambling.
Do you pre-shave your fur before you...
I don't shave any fur.
Good.
I hate shaving fur. I really do. Hairballs get everywhere. It's hard to make it look nice and flat. I mean, you can do it. I mean, there's beautifully shaved suits, but I like to cut out the middleman, and I just buy whatever lengths I actually need.
Yeah, you have to be really careful when you shave.
Oh, I can shave fur. I just hate doing it, because if you do it wrong, you divot it, and then you're like, oh, I gotta refur this whole head. Dirt to dirt.
It's like natural colors are easy to find and shorter than
Yeah, some of the more crazy ones are not, and you have to shave it. But it took me a while to make my new suit because I was really waiting to find the right brand. I'm patient, but commissioners are not patient. And when I did shave fur, I actually mostly did it by hand with scissors because I'm crazy. I mean, I had clippers, but I would, do you have my towel? Can I borrow your butt brush, please? I mean, you can use clippers, but what I would do is I'd actually back brush it. Like the grain is going this way, and I would back brush the snot out of it, and then I would sometimes go over it rough with clippers. If you cut with clippers this way, bad. Only ever go in either direction the fur runs. Never go across the grain of the fur. All furs have a grain. I mean, like her chest, the grain is going down. You can either cut going up or down. If you cut across, you're going to have these wonderful little channels in your fur. Because it's just like human hair. When they usually trim it, they don't go whoop, they go up and down. Because it hides that trim and makes it blend properly. But I would go in with scissors. Like, I did trim, I did lie, sorry. I didn't mean to lie to you. I did trim this a little bit, and I did it all by hand. Because it's the same fur as her stomach, but it was just a little scruffily because there was just 2 little pieces, and I was too lazy to find another cream, and buy a half yard or a yard, and pay for shipping, and if you buy a little fur, you can't. And it was this, and I just hate clippers. I mean, if you had to clip a whole head, I would use clippers. But I really I back brushed it, and then I would take a scissors and just go, back brush it, back brush it. And I would keep working on it and just trim it off until it all gets level. And I would just keep brushing it and hitting it. And it takes a little practice to get that. I would practice that on a piece of fur before I would do it on your head. But really, all I do is back brush and cut. I mean, you can get away with not using clippers. You can get away with not having airbrushes. You can dry brush things. You can cut things by hand. You don't have to have all the fancy things people say you have to do the thing. Anyway, do you have any other questions I can answer? I mean, it's so broad. It's hard to cover in a short time frame, and I'm just jumping everywhere.
Whenever you're actually duct taping, patterning the duct tape dummy, say you have the duct tape dummy stuffed, how do you tape that and then cut it off without cutting the other duct tape? Like, do you just put an old pair of clothes on it or something?
When I'm doing, what I did is I bought an awful pair of pants. I like to go to Goodwill or somewhere and pay a whopping $1 for a pair of pants someone doesn't love anymore. And I will put those on and I will mutilate those. And so what I did was I found, hey, I popped the seam there too because I'm so good with fursuits. I put them on my duct tape dummy. So they were just a pair of like workout nylon pants that you would never be caught out dead in the real world with. Like they were hideous. They had like roses and stuff. Someone liked them though. And I would tape over that because I had the foam attached to that. And so then whenever I got ready to cut it, if I accidentally nipped something, if they're a pair of pants I don't care about. If I nicked my foam doesn't really care if you nick it as long as you don't slice the crap out of it. Because I'm sure there's little gouges all on my foam, but you'll never know because fur hides many ills. You can get away with a lot. And even if you cut the duct tape tummy underneath, put another piece of duct tape on the hole.
So you don't want to, like, say, put that on top of it and then duct tape up that on that?
No, you could do that. You could slide. I mean, I wouldn't use if you could do the way how I did it, where I used a pair of crappy shorts and transferred my padding to a nice pair of pants, you'd be a little bit more ginger because I'd hate for you to spend $20 on a pair of nice wicking pants and then clip them, and because this stuff likes to fray like crazy. And I actually nicked a place on these because I herpedermed. And it likes to fray, and I had to mend it, and it was not fun. And you don't even have to pop, I mean, you could just leave it glued to your pair of pants and just use it like that. You wouldn't have to skin it. I found that the fur drags on foam really hard. Like, it's grippy. It doesn't want to slide over foam. But whenever you skin it, the fur slides over it. And so it makes putting on, taking off, and moving it a lot less, traumatic's not the word, but it's a lot nicer to use and wear if it's slick. Because the backing of fur, while it is soft, it's kind of greppy. Because, I mean, you have a fursuit on right now. You know how it's kind of scratchy and grippy and special. Yeah, and if you drug that over a piece of raw foam, it doesn't like to move. And so that's why I skinned mine, is to make the movement a lot smoother so that my knee didn't want to just catch all the time. It was an experiment. Everything's an experiment.
So I guess you just find some of that same kind of fabric at the craft
I went, literally, again, I went to like Hancock's and went and rummaged in their remnant pile because I love their remnant pile of reject fabrics that no one wants. And I got a yard of this swimsuit, like for nylon, for like $1.50. I wasn't being super picky because I was just trying to get my fursuit done in a month. And I wasn't ever expecting to show anyone what the insides looked like, so I kind of did what I did. But it actually works really well.
Yeah, it's like go with that type of fabric or lycra on your undersuit.
Yeah, you don't want to use a cotton.
If you watch an animal and watch how their muscles move and how the fur moves with the muscles, this gives it the same effect.
Yeah, the skin is like if you have a dog or a cat, you can scrub them and move their skin everywhere on their body. Like a cat is just a sack of skin with meat inside of it. No, really, they are, because you can take a cat and just be like, oh, your belly's on your head. Because their fur isn't really. I mean, there are attachment points, but it slides. Like even our skin. I mean, ours is a little bit more, but it slides over the muscles. And so to make that more convincing illusion of Digitigrade, you try to make it where the fur can slide over the muscles. Now again, if you attach the padding to the suit, that doesn't happen. But how I wanted to do was, I wanted the really form-fitting, and I'd seen where the attached padding, I have a friend that has attached padding in her knees. And it's attached to the suit, so the padding kept wanting to go, it wanted to go party over here, and not where it was supposed to be. But having it attached to the actual pants that are stuck to me, that are like, because it's stretchy pants, so it's super tight to me, the padding is less likely to want to migrate and have a party elsewhere on my body. Now the butts kind of want to migrate, so, but butt padding, weird. Do y'all have any more questions? Yes?
Can you make Digitigrade legs without a duct tape dummy?
You could. You would probably need a helper. Because what's going to happen is without a duct tape dummy, you're probably going to have to wear them while you're making them. Like you're going to be wearing the breeches and then hot gluing foam to you and hoping you don't burn yourself while you're doing it. So it's not, I wouldn't advise it at all. But really, you can go to Dollar Tree. Actually, I hate Dollar Tree duct tape for this part. Buy like one of those Mondo rolls that's like 3 inches thick. They're like $4 or $5. You don't have to buy name brand duct tape. You don't. Just buy one of those big rolls and you probably only need 2 or 3. I mean, depending on how big you are as a person, well, more surface area needs more duct tape. And also, I mean, if you were just doing like, if you were, because are you a full suit or are you a 3/4 suit?
I'm a full suit.
Okay. If you were like us, there's a couple of 3/4 suits running around here, and if you were just doing Digigrade like that, you just have to do duct tape to your waist. Because if you're a 3/4 suit, you're going to be wearing clothes with it, and there's no point in doing a whole Digigrade. Just end it where you want your fursuit to end. Like, I would end it a little bit higher, because most shirts come to here, so I would end your fursuit maybe under your bust or right around your rib cage, in that area, and that way you have a little leeway. But for a full suit, you're going to have to duct tape your whole self. But you could try doing it where you buy one of those commercial patterns and mock it up in cotton and have it taken in by someone who can help you, if that makes sense. You walked in a little late, and I talked about how you could take a commercial, like one of the McCall's or Simplicity's animal jumpsuit patterns that come out in force during Halloween, $5 or $6 for a pattern. Do it in cotton fabric, and then you could put that on, and you'd have to do it a little big so you have extra, like you want bell-bottom legs when you make it, and then you could pin in the shapes you want without a duct tape dummy. But to get it to where it looks nice, you really need a duct tape dummy. I'm not saying it won't look nice, but it's fiddly, and it's hard. I'm trying to articulate that you can do the thing, it just takes a lot more work to make everything happy and not lumpy, bumpy special. I hope. I know that wasn't exactly like, yeah, you can do it. Yeah. And
Question, contact cement.
contact cement? I actually used contact cement for my paw pads.
Okay. But I was thinking contact cement for the foam padding.
I don't know about contact cement. You can use like one of the spray cements, like I think like E900 is one a lot of people use. That's the one a lot, but I don't like the spray foam ones because they saturate, the spray glues, because they saturate the foam and make it a lot heavier. They give it a lot more heat. And I really like, I could probably make a fursuit head with 2 glue sticks. Like I almost use no glue in my fursuit heads. It's pretty much held together by the actual fur. I mean, I'm not saying that's gonna fall apart, it's just that I'm really light with everything. I don't know why, that's just how I did my thing. But I did use contact cement on that. I don't know if I'd use contact cement on that part specifically. I would stick to like one of the spray glues or stitching it or hot glue.
Okay.
So, because contact cement, it does a lot of good things, but I don't know if I trust it about that. That seems...
Yeah, it's just kind of wondering.
Hey, test it. I mean, really, get a pair of crappy pants, contact cement a piece of foam to it, and see what happens. I would put like a piece of something behind the fabric because contact cement likes to seep through.
Yeah.
But, I mean, hey, you have a question, try it, see what happens. That's the only way we can learn new crap about fursuit is if people try stuff and screw up a lot.
First, make a tutorial.
If it works, make a tutorial. Post it on Fursuit Live Journal that no one uses anymore. Do y'all have any more questions that I can help y'all with?
You too.
Like I said, it's such a big thing to talk about, and I can draw more things or talk about more things. It's just, it's hard. Hours a lot of nothing. Questions? No? Nothing else I can cover to help y'all with any of this?
Keep them away from open flames.
Yes, keep them away from flames. Plastic don't like heat. Fake fur is plastic. It's an oil byproduct too. Your fursuit's made out of crude oil. Ah. So that's why every time oil prices change, foam and fur gets more expensive. Who knew? But, I mean, I put zippers in my feet. Like, what was on my old fursuit, they were the tuck-in kind, where you could tuck the ankle up in your leg. But I'm such a dumb derp rolling around the carpet that my ankles would always flop out, and I'm an old school fursuiter, so I don't like any flesh showing. I'm really neurotic about, if your skin's showing, I'm like, I'm not gonna say anything because you're having fun and that's awesome. But in the back of my head, my old school, like, my shtick, get off my lawn. It's like, no. So for me, like, skin showing is like, if my skin shows, I'm like paranoid about it. I'm like sitting there going, like, it's like if your pants fell off. I'd be freaking out if my skin showed. It's the weirdest thing. But I wanted it to be a seamless transition. On mine, let me turn it right side out. That'll be easier.
You can just throw your feet in the washer too, right?
Yes, I can throw everything. Actually, my head's washable too. I'm just afraid to test it just yet. I didn't want to test it yet. But it should be washable. And it's going to go in the bathtub after MFM to prove it. But I'm like, I'm 90% sure my head is machine washable actually. But I'm afraid to do it. because there's that little bit of doubt that I might have failed and something bad's gonna happen. It's only the eyes. If the eyes exploded, I can make new eyes. Yes?
What do you say the eyes are made out of again? I keep forgetting the word.
I actually make my eyes out of styrene.
Yeah, I keep forgetting.
Like, a lot of people use the rubber, like if you go to like Target or something, buy those rubber bowls, not rubber, hard plastic bowls, and use like a Dremel or scissors to cut them. I don't get along with plastic bowls. It's like usually like the curve is too hard or something about it aggravates me because I'm neurotic about this. And I actually bought a huge sheet of styrene for like $20 one time because I'm like a hobby crafter that can't ever do one thing for longer than 10 minutes before I switch to the next hobby. But yeah, it's like neurotic. It's just like, oh, shiny. Oh, let's try this. Oh, origami. Oh, let's make armor. So I have this huge sheet of styrene, and I'm sitting there going, and it makes this weird wobbly noise, and I'm like, I can make eyes out of this. And there's different thicknesses. I honestly can't tell you what thickness I bought because I literally went to some like Tap Plastics, I think, is one of the stores, and they're like, oh, you can buy 2 yards of this for $20 shipped to your door or something. It seemed like that. And I'm like, oh yeah, who needs a lot of plastic? Everyone does. And I bought it, and that's what I started making eyes out of. And I'll make a template, like I use like hard stuff. And I'll take a Sharpie and just start drawing crap. I'm like, what? Let's do this eyeball. Let's do this eyeball. And I'll cut it out and be like, no. And I'll just keep drawing stuff and trying to refine the shape I want. And when I'm done, I'll take it and stick that sucker to the styrene and trace it with a pencil. And then I get a pair of scissors, and styrene's a lot thinner than the bowl plastic or what have you. So I just take a pair of scissors and I just cut it out. And I poke a little hole for the pupil, and then I cut the pupil out. And then I repeat for the other eye. And I actually use plastic mesh for the pupils. I don't like the fabric kind because, again, I want a washable fursuit head. So I found this really narrow plastic mesh at Joann's near the it isn't the big, like old school, you make fursuits heads out of this plastic mesh with the huge ones. This is like a really, you can come look at it, it's a really fine plastic mesh. I found those tiny little sheets for like $5, and I'm like, you better work. And I painted it with acrylics and sealed it. I have some lacquer-based sealer that I use for taxidermy. That's this hard stuff that I got at Lowe's. And I sealed them really good on both sides. Not so much that the holes were clogged by the sealant, but I sealed it really good because I wanted to test to see if I could throw it in the washing machine. And acrylic paint is not water safe. I mean, you could use like permanent markers probably on it, but I wanted something with better coverage that I could blend. And also I tried using glowing paint and that didn't work. Yes, do you have a question? Or you just raise your hand? No? Cameraman. Okay, sorry. I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
I'm guessing that sealing is just like clear stuff. That
well, you don't have to seal your eyes. It depends on what you use. Like if you use like Prismacolor markers on your buckram, which is what most people use. Buckram is kind of a stiff fabric mesh they use. Yes, like that brand has. And it can run if your sweat gets on the paint or the marker or what have you if you're not careful. A sealer is just something to help make sure that it tolerates your humidity and moistness and sweatness and fun. And like I even had a pair of eyes that were buckram, and I get really sweaty in fursuit. It's gross and bad. But my sweat actually went whoop on the eyeball, and I went, run, let's run. So I had like a droopy eyeball. Like I was like, oh, this is bad. It was like one of my first ones. That's when I learned about sealing. And there's clear sealer. There's all kinds of sealers. You can look that up. I mean, Joann sells different sealers. I bought mine at Lowe's because if I own it, I'm going to try to use it. I don't want to buy more stuff. And it's a rattle can. It's like literally like a clear lacquer-based sealer. It's a rattle can. And I just I got paranoid because lacquer-based stuff sometimes eats plastic. So you have to be careful about what chemicals you mix with what things. And I was very ginger with it and sealed my eyes that way. And we're going to see if they work after MFM to not go explode. So, but if you go to like an art store like Michael's, they're going to sell sealers in their paint area. And there's brush-on ones, but I got rattle can because that's what I had handy. I'm a big fan of not spending extra money. And if it works, it works. Hey, let's not complain about it. Oh, I tell you this because a lot of people don't know about these and use those puzzle pieces, and I love this stuff, even though it costs extra money. The bottoms of my feet. Most people use, I know it has nothing to do with Digitigrade, but it's useful. You know those puzzle pieces that most people use, or those workout mats, or yoga mats, or what have you? They don't really hold up. Not in the long run. Concrete eats them pretty bad. And well, you know what I found? Go to your local home store, like Lowe's. Go to their welcome mats. These are made out of recycled tire rubber. They do not cut happily. I use a pair of twin snips to cut these stupid things. And they smell bad, and they're angry, and it's jaggedy. And I actually use a Dremel to clean up my edges because it's just so mangry. But this stuff does not let it out. I have my last pair of feet that I used for 3 full, like, those feet are ancient. They barely have any wool. It will, I mean, the paw pad's a different matter entirely. I'm sure that'll die eventually because I was doing something unique and I don't know if it works yet. We're going to find out in another year or two if it destroys itself. But this blackness, you can come look at it. It is, the other side, I mean, if you look inside my foot, I got a hummingbird. Because that was a hummingbird welcome mat. Because my mom was mad because she wanted it, and I'm like, no, I bought it for fursuits. Go buy one when they get them back in stock. I needed feet. She can wait. But, I mean, really, and to make the bottoms, just make a pattern of your foam. Like if you were tracing your hand like you were making a turkey, put your foot down, draw a pattern, transfer it to the welcome mat, cut it out. And a lot of people use shoe glue. That's what I used to use. You can buy it at Walmart. It's cheap. It's in a tube. It smells hideous. Do it outside. Please don't die. I used contact cement this time because I accidentally bought like 7 things of contact cement for nothing. So I was like, hey, let's see if this works. And contact cement you have to put on both pieces and let it wait like 10 minutes and then snap them together. And then they never come apart. And it's worked really well for me. And the edges, there's 2 pieces. I actually made a double sole. And I have the fur tucked between the 2 pieces on the edge so that the edge can't peel up. So, it has nothing to do with Digitigrade, but it's useful. And you can come look at these. I mean, I can pass these around actually because they're not manky. And it's just recycled tire rubber mats, and they're the best things since sliced bread. They're not cheap though. It's like $20 or $25 for a mat sometimes. And you have to be careful because some of them are have like raised designs, and that'll weaken the mat. You need to try to find one that's just consistent all the way through, because some look like cobblestones and all these other fancy things that you don't want. You don't want cobblestone feet.
Okay, I'm sitting here and thinking, you did 2 sheets, right? One was a solid.
That's how I did the paw pads. I actually made.
Cut out the paw pads.
Yeah. I made 2 copies of my foot paw pattern. I cut it. I cleaned up the edges, and then I actually cut out the paw pad shape I wanted. And then I took my inside piece that didn't have the shape I wanted, and I actually cemented a piece of pleather to that. And let it set, do its thing. And then I took my paw pad piece, which was the exterior piece. I can draw it. I got things. I took my exterior piece and I contacted that cement to the inside piece. Like I had inside piece, and then outside piece, and then outside piece had the cutouts for the palm. The inside piece, that's where I actually cemented the pleather to. And then I eventually just went boop on top. But I did not cement about a ½ inch around the edge. So that when I furred them, instead of having that raw edge, I mean, it's still kind of janky because it looks feet. But that edge I could tuck in. I have metal tools for all sorts of things. And I just tucked it in and it would put a little hot glue in there and squish it. Tuck it, squish, tuck, squish. And so that way the edges can't pull up and go stupid. Because the puzzle pieces, a lot of times they'll just glue them to the edge and they'll want to kind of peel up and become potato chips where you just peel it and go crazy. Because hot glue doesn't stick to those puzzle pieces very well. It has nothing to do with Digitigrade, but hey, helpful. Any other questions that I can help y'all with? Yes?
You said you use pleather for the paw pads? Because I use fleece. And
I
it's getting
can't
all
tell
dirty.
you. Well, my hand paws are actually some sort of weird velour. Again, I got the bargain bin because I love bargain bins. Yeah, there's some sort of weird velour. I've never done a plank where you use a stitch around the edge of your paw pad. I'm not good with sewing machines, even though I do fursuits. I'm just not. We don't get along. But I use some sort of velour for mine. I'm not a fan of fleece in general because fleece kills.
I use fleece on the bottom of this. It's getting all dirty.
Yeah.
My feet are poking it through.
Well, that's why I'm still leery about how I did those feet. I don't trust them yet because I haven't used the crap out of them for a couple of years yet. They've been in use for a year. They still look brand new, so I'm kind of excited. But I'm still waiting. Now, if you make that palm pad, like if you look at my feet, that pad, if you make it too big, it's going to sag and touch the ground. But if you make it small enough, it'll stay tight and you won't have to worry about the pleather touching. Like if you made your whole foot that pleather pad, it's going to touch the ground and die and explode. And you want to make sure that the thing that's touching the ground is that soling material and not anything else. Like those feet, if you recessed your paw pad some, it would protect your fleece better. You're fine.
Also, my foot is like, it's just completely foam, so it's like poking through too.
Like, did you build it on like a little slip-on shoe or something? Or?
No, just I made it completely foam.
Ah, it's like a sock paw. right?
No, it's just foam. I shaped foam, and my foot is sitting on
So
foam.
what is your sole though?
Well, actually, my heel kind of goes through here and touches the ground right there, and that's
Yeah. See, that's why I didn't put a heel on mine, is because that's such a impact point that I knew it would fail. You kind of have to play, even though you want your fancy Digigrade animal with feet paws, I try to take into account wear and tear. And while I would love to have a beautiful big foot paw, I'm like, that's not going to last. So her foot paw, I got a foot back so I can show you. I actually tested it. I wanted to have a bigger pad, but I knew the pressure from my actual foot would make this pleather bow and start scratching the ground. And it would not last that, because pleather is not meant for that nonsense. Oh, we're overgoing. So I gotta shut up soon. But anyway, I moved the pad up and made it smaller, and my actual heel always hits this. So I don't have to worry. My arch is here, and my actual, my actual toes are here. So the actual pressure points are here and here. And so this leaves this to be pretty and not bow and go stupid. Anyway, we were getting kicked out for good reason.